Hello and welcome to episode 267 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now coming up on today's episode, I'm joined by the writer, the visual effects and director himself, Patrick Reed Johnson. You may know Patrick for his work in writing one of my favourite classic kind of 90s films, Dragonheart. He was involved in writing the screenplay for Spaced Invaders. He's worked on some of the effects for Bill and Ted. But today, the focus is all about the film that's all about his life. In some places, it's called just 77. In other places, it's called 5/25/77. But it's an amazing film that I've just seen last week. And it's all about his life, growing up in Illinois, falling in love and becoming one of the first fans of the movie that changed everything. Yes, Star Wars. So you know that we're going to talk really in depth about this film today and so much more. It's a great interview and I can't wait to share it with you in just a couple of moments' time. But as always, I always like to use the intro of every episode of Mark and Me just to basically touch base and thank you all for listening for my previous episode. I was joined by Andy Cairns from the incredible band Therapy. We got to sit down and talk all about the band's brand new album, Hard Cold Fire. I've seen some lovely tweets and Facebook comments this week about how much everyone enjoyed it. Everyone's loving the new album and it's done really well in the charts, so amazing for this. And hopefully we'll get Andy back on for a third time in the very near future. But today it's all about Patrick Reed Johnson, and that interview will just be only a few seconds away. But just before I give you that interview, let me just give a big shout out to the sponsor of the podcast, Richer Sounds. Those guys help me each and every week, and if you're in the market for a brand new TV or home cinema surround sound system or Sonos, honestly go on richersounds.com and you won't be disappointed. So thanks for those guys for sponsoring me. All that's left to do now is to give you the interview with me and Patrick. So here we are talking all things film. So Patrick, thanks for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
It's a pleasure.
Patrick, what I like to do for anyone that tunes in for maybe the first time today and then will discover your work is take it right back to the very start of your journey. So talk to me when you were growing up. Can you remember those first films that maybe your family had on in the house or that you watched or rented that made you fall in love with cinema?
Well, there was no renting in those days. There was no video in those days. It was literally just film in cinema. And the very first film that I was taken to that I can recall, I was 2 years old, and it was Bambi.
Wow.
And of course, in typical Disney style, they immediately destroy you as a child by killing the mom and and orphaning the poor little deer. And I think it sort of informed everything I've ever written about ever since. This sort of crushing need to keep a family alive or bring back, which is in the current film and pretty much anything else I've ever worked on. So
that's a pretty tough one to start with. I think that kind of has stuck with me, that film, for many years, where I can't really get over it. And
right.
Is it Watership Down as well? Like there's this certain couple of films I'm like, God, they fucked me up badly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They're the kinds of films that take you and wring you out, right? Well, first they clobber you, especially if you're young and dependent on your parents still. If you're a little child, yeah, no, those kinds of films. And then early on, I mean, it was the height of the space program when I was growing up. I mean, I was born in '62, so everything was on. All systems go. Your GI Joe at Christmas was a John Glenn GI Joe with a Mercury capsule, and I was allowed. My father was also a space program nut, and he would allow me to stay home from school any day there was a launch on, even if it was scrubbed. I got to stick around and not go to school. And typically they were in the morning, so the launch would go off, and you would think he'd send me to school, but he'd let me sit around and listen to Walter Cronkite talking about, with the little models, saying, and then the docking will happen like this, and I was hooked. I wanted to be an astronaut before a filmmaker, but then in those days you had to join the armed forces, and it wasn't a popular time to get into the armed forces in the '60s. And film had taken over my life by the time I was 8 anyway.
So I mean, that's parenting done right for me. I think if I could be kept off for everything like that, I'd want to join NASA or something like that. I think that sounds like the perfect childhood.
Yeah. Well, it was. I mean, the very first film I ever exposed in a movie camera was my dad's little Kodak Brownie, brick
Oh,
camera
wow.
with a fixed lens and a Super 8 cartridge, and it was me shooting him riding the bus on the tour of the Kennedy Space Center. You know,
That's amazing.
yeah, yeah.
So then when you went down the route, obviously not at the age of 8, but later on, and you absolutely loved film and that was the route you wanted to go down, did you have a supportive family? Were they kind of like, yep, you can do this. We believe in your writing ability. We believe that you've got the skills and talent. Or were they kind of, I ask this on every episode to everyone I talk to, but were they supportive or were they like, you need to get a proper job, son?
Well, at first, since I started, essentially making movies in the basement, blowing up my train sets and setting fire to my miniature army men and that sort of thing. Um, at first, it was just a fun hobby, and my father liked it. But he was what I didn't know, and I don't even think he knew at the time, because we're talking about literally 8 years old, having just seen
Yeah.
2001: A Space Odyssey. And so, great, he's got a little hobby. It keeps him occupied. Now I can worry about the other kids because he's on his own. He can do what he. And my mom was the same way. I don't have to supervise him. He hopefully won't set fire to the place, but other than that, he's got himself occupied. Problem is that once it was time to graduate high school and decide where I was going to college and all of that, and my father was like, so now these are the good medical schools where you'll be going. You'll apply here. I'm like, I'm not going to medical school. I saw the miserable life you've led he was the chief of anesthesia at every major hospital he worked at, and he hated every minute of it. He was George C. Scott in the movie The Hospital. That's who
Yeah.
he was. And I said, I don't want that's I've never wanted that. And he goes, well, you're going to do it. And that was the beginning of an impasse that lasted a number of years. My mom, on the other hand, was like, whatever you believe you can do, you can do.
That's
And I
awesome.
and I totally support you. And she obviously, you've seen the film, went out of her way to support my habit.
It's incredible. And with the writing route, obviously, when you worked in the 90s on Space Invaders and Dragonheart, did you then kind of have like this kind of evidence and kind of like, look, mum, look, dad, it was worth it. Like, I have gone out there and done as I said, and I'm writing on these incredible films with amazing directors and an amazing production team. And I've kind of stuck to what I wanted to do. I followed my dream.
Yeah, no, there was no question. I mean, again, my mother never wavered. To the contrary, she just kept kicking me in the ass, saying, "Well, now you're also a pretty good actor, Patrick. I don't understand why you don't do what Tom Hanks did and just go become a famous actor." And I was like, "Oh, because it's that easy, Mom." But meanwhile, my father and I, we were at an impasse for a number of years until one day his my stepbrother Michael was it was bring your Cub Scout troop to work day. And I get a call from my stepmother, and I haven't spoken to my father for like a year, right? He's so angry with me for not going to medical school. But at this point, I'm working as the head of a miniature shop for a visual effects company, and I'm pulling in more money per month than he is. Because in the early 80s, model makers were at a premium. Everybody wanted, movies with models in them, and I was suddenly making more money than my anesthesiologist father. And my little brother, Michael, wanted more than anything to be a visual effects guy. So he brought his Cub Scout troop to my work instead of his father's work. But my dad tagged along because he felt like he had to be there. And he shows up, and we haven't seen each other in a year. And he takes a tour of the facility and sees all these miniatures on motion control rigs and, optical printers working away, and cool visual effect shots and various, levels of preparation and finishing. And he leaves with kind of a curt goodbye. And then the next day, I get a call from my stepmom, who worked with him in the operating room. She was a nurse, and she said, "You should have heard your father yesterday in the operating theater. My son does this, he does that, blah
Oh,
blah
that's
blah." Yeah,
awesome.
and he was fine. He changed his mind. He knew that and see, he had desperately wanted to be an artist as a young man, and this was the late 1930s, early 40s. And his parents said, under no circumstances, if you want to go up to Paris and hang out with the cafe crowd and do impressionist painting, you can do it on your own and without our last name. We'll disown you. And in those days, that kind of thing was like a death sentence. Now your dad says he's going to disown you. You're like, please, when go ahead. But and so he became brilliant at something he hated. And he finally really respected me. And by the end of his life, he and I had patched it all up. He became a great grandfather, and he to my kids, And he really, really said, you did what I was not brave enough to do, and I'll always be proud of you for that. So
That's the ultimate kind of compliment. You don't need a 5-star review from Empire. You need your dad's pat on the back.
that's right. That's right.
And I don't want to go into too much detail about the film because I like people to then listen to this and then go and check it out and hopefully buy the Blu-ray or digitally stream it. And what I do want to say is you must be so proud to have had this greenlit, to have it supported, to then see this project over the line, because it's a passion project that, you know, one, maybe two out of every 100 ever get past the writing stage. And you must be so happy that it's actually physically there now, it's done, and people can see this.
Well, exactly, because there were many, many times over its 18-year gestation
Yeah.
that I was told by both by those who wanted to see me fail, but even by those who wanted to see me succeed. Patrick, really, at a certain point, you might want to just put it down. It probably isn't going to get done. And I couldn't do that. Not only forget about me, but every single person that worked on it, those still living and those who have not survived long enough to see its finish. I mean, everyone from certain actors in the piece, Justin Mentel, who did such a brilliant job as the villain, and even though he's the nicest guy or was the nicest guy on the planet, to Gary Kurtz, the producer of Star Wars, who was the one who first encouraged me to tell the story in the first place, because I never thought, it didn't occur to me that it would make a movie. And when he heard it, he said, well, that's here. Because I wanted to do like a 1970s American Graffiti. And Gary said, and we were partnered on a bunch of other projects. And he said, yeah, you go do that on your own. I've done my American Graffiti. I don't, we don't listen to the same music. We don't drive the same cars. It doesn't hold a lot of weight for me. And I said, well, there's one little tiny detail I left out of the little American Graffiti thing. And it was the whole trip to Hollywood. He goes, why did you leave that out? And I said, I just felt like it was too, no one would believe it. He goes, that's the point. It's true. So you have to tell it. And he luckily did see a very close to finished version, and I'm very proud for him and for Fred Roos and all the actors, and John Francis Daly does such a wonderful job, and all the young actors who are unknown who showed up and played all those supporting roles, plus with Austin Pendleton and Colleen Camp and Neil Flynn, all just turning in really lovely performances because they liked the material.
It is the performances alone. I want to see them all go on to bigger things and be successful, because I remember it gave me the feeling of the first time I saw the film Super 8, and at that point none of those actors were kind of known, and all of them just put in a performance that just completely told the story, had my heart from the moment they walked on screen, and I just fell in love, and that's how I felt when I watched this. And I really hope I get to see their names in the future going on to bigger, brighter, huge releases.
I hope so too. They're all 18 years older now. But what's interesting is, and I don't have a logo to show you just right now, but I'll send one to you later. There's talk of 2 sequels that we would not take 18 years to make, but we would have, because we've got about 5 more hours worth of footage of all these amazing actors 18 years younger.
Wow.
That could be flashback material for what happens to this character, me, when I get to Hollywood, and the 18, 19 years I spend there, and to be able to cut back and forth between all of that old footage and having them reprise their roles now. And the first one is 5/25/90, The Empire Strikes Pat, which is essentially a story of the Pinto coming out of the monolith, arriving in Hollywood, and me going from model maker to screenwriter to director to leaving and hating it, and it ends like Empire, with everybody sort of going their separate ways and everyone deeply unhappy. And then the third one is 5/25/04, Return of the Alumni, in which
lovely.
all my old friends from Hollywood and all my old friends from high school get together in Wadsworth, Illinois, to make 5/25/77.
That's genius. That has to happen. I want to see this now in the next few weeks get announced.
I'm working on it.
That would be
tell your friends.
good. And then while this is out there now and the world obviously can get to see this, obviously you're not going to spend the next 18 years doing your next project. That's you've probably got the best kind of taste for it now and the urge to get something done as soon as possible. Is there anything that you're working on? I know those possible sequels would be incredible. Is there anything else you're kind of doing behind the scenes, or are you just going to take a little bit of time out and then start again?
It's funny. There's about 12 things that have been sort of sitting in the corner waiting patiently. But one of them has come to the forefront, and it's right now. I'll just say that it's a television series, a streaming television series, and it's a very epic. It's not Star Wars. It's more like Captain's Courageous in space, um, and with a heavy interleaving of AI and the singularity and the end and possible beginning of one species leading to another. And it's something Douglas Trumbull worked on with me for quite some time. There's Gary Kurtz worked on it and is still attached, cosmically.
Lovely.
And there's a number of cast members I can't talk about who've already expressed interest in coming aboard, because this is based on some material I created a long time ago, which was instrumental in getting Dragonheart made, because it was sort of the demo. It couldn't even have been shot back in 1995, but it was just too expensive. But now everything that's in it can be done. And I'll have more to talk about with that in maybe about a month.
You're more than welcome to come back, and we can
Would love to.
deep into that. And I'm going to keep everything crossed to see that happens.
Thank you.
What I do on the podcast, and it's my final question, obviously I'm aware of time.
Right.
Every guest that's come on, and I've had over 270 episodes now with guests
Wow.
like Kevin Smith, Mads Mikkelsen, Anthony Hopkins, Aubrey Plaza, you name them, they've been on, but they've all had the same question to end with, and you don't get to have a pass to not be asked this. I put you on the spot and I ask you the final piece of music that plays at the end of today's interview, after this is all edited and out there for the world to listen to. You get to choose the final song that's played. It can be any band, any piece of music, any score, but I put you on the spot. What's one of your favorite songs, and why would you love it to close today's episode?
Well, it's weird because I don't want to come from it's only because it was such an honor that I got to do it. There's a song in the movie called "I Can't Get There From Here," which I wrote. And Alan Parsons, my dear friend, but formerly my dear hero, heard it, loved it so much that he said, "Let me produce this, and I'll do it for free for your film in exchange of you letting me have it on my next album." And, for a fan of his to have grown up in high school where he was my anthem, everything he wrote was sort of my touchstone, to have him validate something I did out of sheer panic. I mean, it was a song that I wrote like in a couple of days to replace an ELO tune we couldn't get the rights to. And I thought, oh God, this is going to be a disaster. But he liked it so much. And it really sums up the whole feeling that I hope people get from what 52577 is all about. And I'd be honored to have it played on your show if that would be all right with you.
That would be awesome, and no one has chosen that, so that's good.
I'm sure of that.
There's been a lot of Rolling Stones, there's been a lot of Tom Petty, Pearl Jam, but this is good. And then I'll obviously now go down a whole pigeonhole for the next few weeks of listening to all this stuff, so that's always good.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure, and I'd love to come back sometime. And I'm actually going to be over in England, or in the UK and in Ireland, sometime later in the summer, hopefully. So,
well, give me a shout, and we'll make something happen face to face, because
that'd be great.
Feel like we've got a lot longer to talk about, many more stories to tell, and you're more than welcome. But good luck with this release. I can't wait for the world to hear it.
Thank you.
Good luck with the rest of the press.
All right. Thanks so very much.
So there it is. There's my interview. Short and snappy, but Patrick Reed Johnson for me was a great guest. And you heard he's coming back on real soon to talk even more in depth about all things, well, Star Wars, movies, TV. I love the guy. I thought we just hit it off straight away, so I'm really looking forward to that. If you've enjoyed today's episode, as always, go on markandme.com. On there, there's links to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And all I ask, because I don't charge this podcast, is you to share it. If you're on Twitter, hit that retweet button. If you're on Instagram, why not just like it or put it as part of your stories? Or if you're on Facebook, just hit the little share button. That's all I ask, and honestly, it makes a massive difference. I do also have a Patreon account that helps the running of this podcast, so if you're feeling generous and want to throw me a couple of pounds every month, it's greatly appreciated. And for that, I give you a badge, stickers, a welcome pack, updates, newsletters, and an exclusive episode each and every month just for coming on there and supporting me via Patreon. So please, if you've enjoyed today's episode, it really does go a long way, and the link is over on markandme.com. Or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can hit the subscribe button, and that will also give you access to everything that I've just mentioned. Things are getting pretty crazy right now. I've got loads of festivals coming up. I've got another sponsorship deal that I'll be telling you all about on the next episode. And the best thing is I've got a massive episode coming in only a few days' time. A band for me that have absolutely changed my life, and I can't wait to share it with you. So until then, look after yourself, take care, and I'll speak to you all very soon.
Was what you always told me, find a way. You would say as you would hold me, get away from here. It's oh so clear you can't stay. Long ago we were old enough to love but not to know. There were dreams we kept inside but didn't show. And now we don't know how to let go. I can't get there from here, and you can't get here from there, and we can't go still standing on this road that leads nowhere. Touch the sky. If you don't, when you grow old, you'll wonder why you did just what you were told. No one will cry for you if all you do is long to fly. Our final curtain falling, let it be. Listen to the voices calling out to all who hear. Don't let your fear push life aside. I can't get there from here, and you can't get here from there, and we can't go anywhere as long as we're still standing on this road that leads nowhere. But out there it gleams, far beyond all the things we know. The world of our dreams calling to us, but we don't go. I can't get there from here, and you can't get here from there, and we can't go anywhere as long as we're still standing on the